In this nugget, we'll be concluding a discussion of the backup operations, and in particular, complete PC restore, and then we'll also talk more about Active Directory maintenance. First of all, we'll talk about complete PC backup, which is somewhat of a replacement for imaging software such as Ghost. Now, those third-party products are going to be more full-featured than this, but at least it's free and it comes with Windows Server. And by the way, everything I show you about this in Server will also be true of Windows Vista. And then we'll also talk about Active Directory database maintenance. With this, sometimes it's important to get a little bit of an improvement in performance by compacting the database. This is also known as defragmenting the database, and in particular, that ntds.dit file. And then sometimes you need to move it. Maybe you're running out of hard drive space or some other problem has occurred where you need to move the database elsewhere. I'll show you how to do that. Then, we've talked about this in the past, but I just want to quickly review how to protect Active Directory objects, and you can do that using a special kind of a checkbox that appears. Also, we'll take a look here at the Directory Services Restore Mode password. Now, you saw me log on as an account when we use Directory Services Restore Mode, but you can also use the Administrator Directory Services Restore Mode account and change that password if necessary. And then finally, I'm going to show you just kind of a bonus information here on how you can show additional account information for a given account. Okay, my last nugget went a little long, and I didn't want to extend it any further by showing you this next section. So here I'm going to conclude our backup solutions with a complete PC restore. Now, it looks like I've just booted from the Windows Server 2008 DVD. And I have. But that doesn't mean I want to install Windows Server 2008. It means that maybe something has gone horribly wrong with this entire hard drive, or maybe I've replaced the drive, or something catastrophic has occurred. If that's the case, then I can restore the entire operating system using something called Complete PC Restore. This is not an option that appears in the menu system or anywhere in the normal Windows Server 2008 boot environment, or you won't see this anywhere while the system is logged on. So what you'll need to do is to boot from a Windows Server 2008 DVD. And by the way, you could also have booted from a Windows Vista DVD. They both work equally as well. What we're trying to get to here is the WinPE environment, which is what we see right here. That's the UI that's loaded and stuff like that. When we get to the repair options, then we come into something called the WinRE environment, or the Windows Recovery environment. And again, you can boot from a Windows Server 2008 or a Vista DVD, but you do have to boot according to the architecture. So, if I'm trying to restore a system that was an x86 system, then I need to boot from an x86 Windows Server 2008 DVD. And if it was 64, then I need to boot from a 64-bit version. Okay, so now I need to go to repair my computer. And I'm not going to choose install, I'm going to choose repair, and this may take a moment. It has to kind of search for things. Actually, that came out pretty quick, but it identifies an existing installation. That's fine. I click on next, and then what I'll do is a Windows Complete PC Restore. So I'll select that option. Now, what you might have needed to do as well on that previous screen is you may need to go to a command prompt, and that's because you might need to manipulate the disk somehow. Maybe you replaced it with a new disk. It should be able to recognize any new disks anyway and replace the partitions on them and so forth. But if it doesn't, then you can use that command prompt on that previous screen. Now, here I can choose to use the latest available backup, or I can choose to restore from a different backup. I'm okay with the latest one that was made. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Next. And then what that's going to tell me is I also need to confirm that I am going to format and repartition the disks. Now, if there's a number of different disks installed here, like an attached USB drive or external serial ATA or any other drives involved, make sure you choose Exclude and then pick out whichever disk it is that you want to exclude from this process. I don't really need to exclude anything in my case right now, but that is very important to know about, because otherwise you could accidentally format a drive that you actually want to maintain. If you have any odd RAID drivers or anything like that that you need to install so that you can view the appropriate disks, choose Install Drivers there, and then it will prompt you for the proper location. And then you can also automatically check and update disk area information and restart the computer after restoring is completed. Those are options that I normally will select. So then I'll simply click on Next and Finish. And when we do this, I have to confirm also that I know it's going to erase everything. This is just a final warning that everything that's on that disk is now going to be deleted. And I'll click OK and let it start its thing, and that'll take a little while, so we'll come back after it's completed. Okay, and here I've just rebooted the system after the complete PC restore is complete. Notice that I did have that option checked to reboot the computer. Here it is. Really not a lot else to show you here. This is the same machine that I left. So that's exactly the point of complete PC restore, is it can completely bring back a system back to the way it was at the time of the backup. Okay, let's talk now about compacting the ntds.dit file, or compacting the Active Directory database. Now, there's a big question as far as how often you should do it, and how important it is, and how much it will improve performance. Well, the short answer is, when you compact it, it will improve performance, but whether or not it's enough for anybody to be able to perceive, that's another question. It's a little bit of a subjective item, and it's a little difficult to quantify, and it depends a great deal on the size of your organization and the number of changes you have to Active Directory. For example, if you're just a company with a few dozen employees that are pretty stable and not much changes except for the occasional password change, then there's not really a whole lot going on with your ntds.dit. But if you're a major university and you have tens of thousands of university students that enroll and de-enroll, or get kicked out of school or something like that every semester, man, your directory database is going to be extremely busy. So you might need to compact yours more often. And Active Directory, through a garbage collection phase, will do its own compaction periodically. It's called compaction, but it's really not quite the same as what I'm about to show you. What happens there is it will recognize anything that's not being used, and it will rearrange data in such a way that it makes it more efficient, kind of on the fly, while Active Directory is also running. However, it does not do anything to reclaim the empty space, and it's very similar to having fragmented files in your normal file system. So what we want to do is to take Active Directory offline and then compact the database, and then take Active Directory and put it back online. For this, you can go to your services in your Server Manager console. You'll right-click on Active Directory Domain Services and click on Stop. Then you'll say, yes, you want to stop all of these functions from performing. These are all dependent on Active Directory, so if I stop domain services, then all of these have to stop along with it. If I have any other services running, however, such as file sharing, or if I had Wins or any other service running on this server, then they would continue to run. Now, let me pause here for just a moment and point something out. I'm going to do this for compaction purposes, but you can also do this for other purposes, such as maybe you have a Windows update that will somehow improve, or secure, patch, something like that for Active Directory. Well, normally what we'd have to do in the past is we'd have to restart immediately after we'd applied that patch. You might not want to do that with your domain controller because you don't want it to be down that long. Now, conceivably at least, what you should be able to do is to stop domain services and then apply the patch and then restart it, and you might not have to restart the entire computer that way, and save yourselves at least a few minutes. Now, once this stops, what I'm going to do is go to an administrative command prompt, which I've already got open. And I've already got all the commands typed in, and while I'm waiting for that, I'll just go ahead and show you what I've got. Here you'll just do this, and you can pause the screen if you want to make notes or anything like that, but you'll again use our friend ntds util. You'll set to activate the instance of ntds. Again, you can abbreviate this. You'll go to ntds util files. And then you'll go to this command prompt and choose compact2, and I just put it to any directory. Normally it's going to be a local location. I just put it in my temporary directory right there. Then what happens is the defragmentation will take place by itself, and it will compact everything till it gets to 100%. Once that's been done, it actually tells you what else you need to do. It says you need to copy that file that's now in your temp directory, or wherever you decided to put it, into this location, and just copy over it. It'll ask you if you want to overwrite it. You'll say yes. Then you'll delete these log files, and you can see that after I quit, that I did just that down here. So it's really pretty simple, but it might give you a little bit of a performance boost in your overall Active Directory. And then once you've completed all the steps in this command prompt window, you'll then return back here and then start it up again. And that way you have an Active Directory domain services domain controller running and ready to service your clients. Now here I'm going to show you another thing that you can do with offline maintenance of NTDS. Here I'm going to, once again, stop the service for Active Directory Domain Services, and I'm also stopping its accompanying services. Then as I go to an administrative command prompt, I'm going to again run NTDS util. Having gone to NTDS util, I'm going to choose to activate the instance of NTDS. And my typing fingers are getting lazy, so I'm just going to abbreviate that. And in the background here, I'm going to wait for this to finish before I continue on. Okay, looks like it's finished now. So now I'll just press enter here. I'm at the proper prompt, and then I want to go to files. And the reason why I want to do that is just so that I can confirm to myself where the location is of the existing database. Now I already know where it is, and you probably do too, but just FYI, here's where all of the information is in terms of all the files and all the log files and the like. Now what I might want to do is to change the location to a different location. Now before we move on, let's address why we're even here. My main point in being here is to identify the current location of these files and then make a decision as to if I want to move them. So why would I want to move them, by the way? Well, one might be that my hard drive is running out of free space, and my directory is very busy and getting larger all the time. I might want to move them for that purpose. Now, that doesn't happen very often anymore because hard drives are so large nowadays, but it could still happen. And then the other reason might be simply for performance. Maybe this server is really, really busy, and servicing Active Directory and the operating system and something else that it has to do all at once might be too much work on one hard drive. So I could install another hard drive and move the Active Directory files to another drive. So that would be just another example. And also, I might want to just have a more secure location, not in terms of like NTFS types of security, but I simply mean in terms of reliability. So if I have the Active Directory files and the operating system on one hard drive and that drive fails, then I lose both. Now that's somewhat mitigated by the fact that we have multiple peer domain controllers nowadays, but it's still possibly an issue. Now once I've gone to this file maintenance prompt, what I might want to do now is to move them to a different location, and let me show you what I've done. I've installed another hard drive here, drive G, and I've got NTDS dbase. This is empty right now. I'm going to put the ntds.dit file there, and the log files are going to go here. And if I wanted to really spread this out, I would put probably another hard drive in for log files and two separate hard drives, one for database and one for log files. But I'm okay with putting both of those on one for the time being. All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and move the database to a different location. And so now to actually move the database to that other location, I simply type in what you see there, move db2, and then whatever your drive is that you want it to go to, and press enter. And then once you do this, you should also, by the way, make your next backup as soon as possible so that it's going to be pointing to the proper location. Well, in fact, that's what it tells you right here. Make a backup immediately, or else Restore will not retain the new file location. So I wouldn't want to get that mixed up. I wouldn't want to now have something go wrong and then restore from an old backup where it will try to put it in the old location. That could potentially cause some issues there. The other thing I would also want to do is to move the log files. So I think I put that in logs, right? Logs, NTDS logs. Okay, and I want to move the logs to that, so instead of moving the DB, I'll move logs to the location that you see there. And then I'll press enter once again, and we'll see that it is backing up that information here as well. And once again, once you're done with both of these things, you'll want to make your backup as soon as possible. Now, if you look at, I don't know, resource kit items, or if you look at some old resource kit, or if you look at the knowledge base on Microsoft's website, you may see more elaborate methods for moving all of this around. The thing is, this is kind of a new and improved method, because those older elaborate methods require me to also go in and fiddle around with the registry and make a bunch of changes there. This will update the registry for me automatically, however, so I don't have to do all of that. And as lazy as I am, I'm all for that. So we'll just quit here and quit there, and then once I exit this, let's just double check first of all and make sure that these are here. These files are here, the ntds.dit. There's the ntds.dit file. This is a checkpoint file for recovering changes. And then here's the logs. Go into here, and I see the logs are here as well. So that works out pretty well. Now once I've done that, all I need to do is to go back in and start up again my Active Directory services. Now then, finally, let me clean up with a couple of other things. We've talked about, losing stuff, something that gets deleted that you have to restore, and working with all of the Active Directory data and so forth. Here, if I scroll down into Active Directory users and computers, let's just find something to work with here. Notice that we have Arizona with the Phoenix users and Tucson users. Maybe I want to work with another OU now, maybe called Bisbee users. Watch what happens when I do this. When I right-click to choose New Organizational Unit, and I think I mentioned this earlier in our series here, but just as a quick review, if I have a little town called Bisbee, which is down by the border of Mexico, in southern Arizona, then I might create the OU, and notice that there's a new checkbox here that says Protect Container from Accidental Deletion. It was way too easy in previous versions of Windows to accidentally select on an OU and then just hit delete and reflexively click yes, and that OU just goes away. Well, here, when you select that item, when you create an OU, and that, by the way, that's going to be selected by default. Now, if I try to delete it, watch what happens. Are you sure you want to delete it? Yes. Oops, I don't have permissions. Okay, or it's protected by preventing of accidental object deletion. So if I really do want to get rid of that now, what I would do is I'd go to View and Advanced Features, and then going back into that BISBE Users item, I'd right-click to choose Properties, and then on the Object tab, I'd clear this checkbox, click OK. Now I can right-click, delete, yes, and it's gone. Now the other thing I could do is to work with any specific given account. Let's say that here, Phoenix User 09. If this was an account that I wanted to protect so that it would not get accidentally deleted or carelessly deleted, I could also go to this account and go to its properties. And then once I'm in here, I could go to Object, and I could also protect that object from accidental deletion. Now, the difference between these accounts, like groups and users and things like that, and an OU, is that OUs are automatically selected to prevent the object from object deletion. Whereas something like a user account, I will have to either use a script to go in and make a bunch of them protected, or I'll manually go into this interface here to protect it from deletion, so that now when I try to delete it, again, I'll get the same message. I can't do it. But when I try to delete this user, of course, then I can. So that's what is pretty cool there with the prevention of accidental object deletion. Now then finally, I want to show you something else that I can do, and that is to change the local DSRM password, the Directory Services Restore Mode Administrator password. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, James, why do you need to do that? Because last time you restored an Active Directory object, you did so using your trainer account. Well, the fact of the matter is, I had the trainer account with cached credentials on that machine, so I was able to log on. But it could be that you're going to log on to a server that you've never logged on before, and you don't have cached credentials. So what you would have to do then is to log on using the administrator password and account. Now, this could also be the case where I need to reset that password, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. Because perhaps I am replacing another employee who's maybe been fired from the company. So when they leave, maybe they don't feel a lot of generosity in their hearts for having been fired, and they don't want to share with us what password they set for these servers. As long as I go to an administrator command prompt here, I can enter in whatever password I want to for Directory Services Restore Mode. So the way I do that is I go to ntdsutil, and then it takes me to an ntdsutil prompt. I type set DSRM password, and it takes me to this prompt, reset DSRM administrator password. Then I type in reset password on server, and then you type in the name of the server. I'm looking at DC Nugget 4 right now, so that's the server I'm going to change it on. And then you, of course, type it in. And of course, you want to make this a long and complex password for security purposes. By the way, the password that I entered in here is also the password that I use for my online banking. So if you can figure that out, have at it, okay? So anyway, I'll do that and I'll press enter, and now we see that the password has been successfully reset. Now then finally, I want to show you something just kind of cool. I don't think it's going to be on the exam at all, but it's kind of interesting. Let's just take a look at what we've got. Let's just go to some user account. Let's say Tucson User 07. And if we go into this, you can see that I'm using the advanced view. That's why I see published certificates, of which this person doesn't have any. Password replication, which relates to my read-only domain controllers and anything that they may have cached. And some other interesting things, but there's another tab that I'd really like to see that I don't see. That's one called Additional Account Info, and that can show me things such as the last time that user reset their password, the last time that user logged on, how many times they've entered in a bad password. A lot of different kind of cool stuff there that you don't see normally. So in order to make that work, what I want to do is to go to a command prompt, and I'll run this under administrative privileges. And I'm going to close this up for the time being. And you'll see here that I've got a file called accountinfo.dll. Now, this is just part of a number of other tools that you can download from Microsoft, and you can search on Microsoft's website for account lockout tools. The name of the executable then would be altools.exe, and it expands a number of different files into a directory of your choice. And I just copied this file, and I'm using that one for the time being. Then what we'll do is, I just want to run this off of, where did I put that? G? Okay, so it's on my G drive. And I'll run reg svr32 space, and then g:\accountinfo.dll. Okay, and press enter. We see now that that successfully registered that item. So now when I go back into Active Directory Users and Computers, as we go right somewhere here, right here, then we should be able to see that new tab that appears on my user's accounts. And so let me expand some things out here and try to access one of these accounts. And as I do, we'll see that we now have this item, indeed, additional account info. And wow, isn't that cool? So I can see, when their password expires. I can see what their SID is. And you can kind of explore this if you want to and install it yourself and see the kind of cool things that it can do for you. But it's really pretty sweet. Of course, in this account, I've never used the user account. So I've never logged on as that user, so I don't have a whole lot to show. But it is pretty interesting, the things you can do. And I recommend that you at least explore around with this using a test user account. Don't use a production user account until you're familiar with it. And have some fun with it. It's really pretty cool. And let me show you something else here as well, as long as I'm thinking about it. Let me cancel out of this. The reason why I opened up Active Directory users and computers is because the other interface for server management won't work. So if I minimize this, for example, and just open up Server Manager, then we'll see that as I try to access that same account under Roles here and Active Directory users and computers, and you can see where I'm going. I just kind of browse on down till I get to the account that I need. When I double-click here, well, where's the additional account info tab? It does not appear. For some strange reason, this does not work in Server Manager's version of Active Directory users and computers. You have to use this version, the other one that appears by itself on the Start menu, and then you can get what you want. Backup and Active Directory maintenance. In this nugget, we took a look at backup, and we also took a look at Active Directory maintenance. Now, in our last nugget, we talked a lot more about backup, but here we finished with one major portion of backup called Complete PC Restore. And this is something that's also true of Windows Vista, and it's something where you can restore the entire operating system hard drive back to an original state the way it appeared in a backup. Also, we took a look at Active Directory database maintenance. Remember, you can compact, or also known as defragment, the database to give yourself a performance increase and make it more efficient. We can also move that database, but it's best to use the ntdsutil command to do that. We also took a look at protected objects as a way of preventing an object from being accidentally deleted or carelessly deleted. And we took a look at the Directory Services Restore mode password, which you can reset. Also, we took a look at the Additional Account Info tab, which is a great way to take a look at additional information about a user account that would not otherwise be available. Well, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.